everyone, this is one of our virtual Ag Day experiences with the gardening unit. We are in Connersville, Indiana, and this is John Johnson. He has been gardening for 49 years, so he has a lot of experience to share with us. So let's get started. All right, first off, if you can tell us a little bit about your garden and what you like about gardening.
Well, I've always liked gardening since I grew up on the farm when I was a young boy, and I learned to like the soil. I just learned to like to plant and to grow. And when we really look at life, you know, all of life is like a gardening. It's planting and it's reaping and it's harvesting. So there's nothing more enjoyable than to start a garden in the springtime, to plant things and to watch them grow, and later to go out and enjoy the fruits of all your labors.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, what type of plants do you have here?
What we have right here, Amanda, is basically my strawberry crop. It's been a very good year this year. I would imagine I've probably picked at least 100 quarts or more. We're just about on the downside of the crop, though. There's very few left now. But the good thing about the last of the crop is the last are always the sweetest, probably because they're the last.
Yeah.
And beyond this, I have my green beans and my sweet corn.
Wow, you got a lot of green beans. That's awesome. All right. So does it matter where you place your garden?
Very, very definitely, Amanda. One of the problems that we can have with the garden is if you get too much shade, it doesn't allow, you know, the sunlight to come in, and plants need a lot of sunlight. And if you put your garden in a spot where it is too wet, stays too moist, then the moisture prohibits the plants from growing properly. That is one of the problems I have with the rest of the garden area there. Normally in the springtime, it stays too wet too long, but the areas I've selected here generally will dry out much more quicker in the springtime.
Okay. And then do you just let the natural rainfall come down, or do you supplement with watering it yourself?
Normally I like the natural rainfall because the natural rain really has nitrogen and a lot of essential elements that plants need. I do have a water system. We fortunately are on the Everton water system, but I found that when you water your plants, it doesn't do them as much good as just a good natural rainfall. I do have the means to capture rainfall when it comes off the roof of the barn. So if I need to water periodically, I can get some natural rainwater there for them.
Great. All right, can you explain the proper way to plant seeds or even plant starter plants?
Well, the most important thing in planting any seed is to get the ground worked up very, very good. And I normally like to use a manual rototiller to work my garden. I do have a large tractor that has one of the rototillers on behind it, but I find that the tractors will compact the soil too much. So if you use just a walk-behind tiller and till the soil 2 or 3 times and get it real good and fine, and then plant your seed, they will come up a lot faster. And it also makes it much easier to work the plants after they're growing.
Okay, and the same for starter plants?
And strawberry plants, normally a strawberry crop is a crop that takes a lot of faith. I always say that if you're not a person of faith, you'll never plant strawberries, because the first year you set out strawberry plants, you do not get any fruit. You may get a few blossoms, but you are to pick the blossoms off of the plants. And that first year then, when you will set out your plants maybe 12 or 14 inches apart, and by the end of the growing season, they will have put out runners and spread. Sometimes they will get too thick on you. So the next year, when you're picking your crop, after you pick them, then you need to go through and thin out the plants.
All right. And then how do you take care of your plants while they're growing?
Well, one of the most important implements you can use when you have a garden is called the H-O-E, pronounced hoe. Most people don't like to use a hoe because it takes a lot of work, but with the hoe you can get in between the plants within the row to break up the ground, which I have always considered very, very important, is to keep the ground around your plants broken up and keep it loose. And then the next implement you need is what I call a rototiller, and that is used to go between the rows to break up the ground. But I've always considered it important to keep your soil as loose as you possibly can during your growing season.
Okay, and then do you ever have any insect problems?
Insect problems are always a problem no matter what you're raising. And for instance, my potato crop is usually one of the first crops I like to plant in the spring. I like to usually plant the potatoes, at least maybe the third or fourth week in April if possible. But what you generally incur on potatoes is there's a potato bug that gets on them very, very quickly. Normally what I like to do, if they're not real thick, is just to go through and pick them off by hand. Now that may be a little bit squeamish because the potato bugs in their infant state are sort of look like a red jelly bean, and they can be kind of messy. But if the insects are very heavy, then you have to use some type of pesticide. But I really don't like to use a lot of pesticides, particularly on anything that you're going to be eating. But sometimes it's necessary depending on how bad the insects are.
And what are pesticides?
Pesticides, Sunches 7 is generally an all-around type of pesticide. You can use it as a dust or as a spray.
Okay. All right, and then when do you start your garden?
Some people like to start their garden as indoor plants, but I don't do that. What I like to do is to buy good, strong, healthy plants from a greenhouse or a nursery somewhere. And there's a lot of nurseries around that do have good plants.
Okay, and then about when in the season is everything done growing?
Well, the growing season continues usually until about mid-July. Normally, by mid-July, most of the onions have already formed and are completed. Potatoes have made their maturity, and the vines are dying. Sweet corn is coming by then. So usually by mid-August, most of the garden is just about done. Now what you can do is generally in late August, you can start a fall garden. There are certain types of salads and so forth, even beans and so forth, that you can plant in August, and they will continue to bear up until even frost time. So you can actually have 2 gardens within a year's time.
All right, even better. Is there anything else that you want to share about gardening with us?
Well, I guess what I would like to share, particularly for young people, is that gardening can be so rewarding. There is nothing more rewarding than to get out and play in the dirt. I always say that this is what young people today need to do, is to get their hands dirty, get their fingernails dirty by digging and playing in the dirt. It takes a lot of time and effort, it gives you a lot of good exercise, but the reward is that you get to eat some very delicious food that otherwise you will not find anywhere else. So it does have a reward when you see things that you put into the soil start to sprout, to grow and mature, and finally go out and find there on that tomato vine a nice red, ripe tomato and eat it there in the field. That is the reward of having a garden.
Yes, it's very rewarding. All right, well, thank you again, and that's the conclusion of our virtual Ag Day experience with the garden unit.